What's going on, Geminites? It's your boy Gem Mint. We're going to do a review on The Absolute Swamp Thing by Alan Moore, so stay tuned. Yo, I loved this book. Man, this was the first time I have ever read Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. Of course, this is only volume 1, but this is one of the better comics that I've read of all time. I really enjoyed this. You guys know I just got it recently. I did a quick overview. I read it right away in a couple of sittings, and boom, I knocked it out. This is my first time reading it, so the recoloring did not bother me at all. It looks really great. I could just understand people not wanting it to be touched. I could understand wanting the original stuff, which I typically prefer, but I've only seen comparisons in other videos, never read it myself, so for reading this for the first time, the recoloring, it was really good. It looked really great. It really matched Alan Moore's writing style. Like, I couldn't help but feel like it had such a calming, chill vibe throughout this whole book. The way that it read, the way he wrote it, and the way that it looked, it was just very kind of like, just calming. I'm not going to give any spoilers. Try to think about what I even want to say on this book. I mean, I'm not really sure if Alan Moore took liberties in not his origin, but what makes Swamp Thing who he is, or who he actually is. Is he still Alec, or is he something else? So I really liked his take on that. Again, I'm not sure if he created that or not, but it was really smart. The scenes with Swamp Thing kind of being one with nature were incredible. You'll see. We'll flip through this, and now that I've read it, I'll have a better idea of what to look for. The villains in here, other kind of plant-based villains, supernatural villains, a lot of kind of horror-esque. They have a title at the top of the issues of Saga of Swamp Thing that says Sophisticated Suspense, and that's definitely what it is. I can't recommend this run enough, whether you want to get the trade paperbacks and get the original art, or if you want to go for the hardcovers, or you want to jump into this Absolute Edition. This Absolute Edition is beautiful. It has a moss-type feel to it, kind of like a suede fabric that was used. You got the hardcover slipcase. Had a $100 cover price. I buy it from In Stock Trades, and right now I think they're selling it for like $58 shipped. So you can still pick that up. Let's go ahead and flip through the artwork. We'll talk a little bit about the story here, but just got to say that I loved it. All right, just another better look here at the front of the slipcase here. Absolute Swamp Thing, Alan Moore. You have great artists on this book as well. Here is the spine of the slipcase and the back. For a long time, this was what the cover was solicited as, so I'm happy to see they still used it for the back of the slipcase here. In the bottom, you just have the price. Top is all black. Again, beautiful artwork, and they kind of went all out with the detail on this book on how they made it feel. There have been some issues with warping on the cover and some spine issues where the glue is coming undone. This one, I did a whole read-through. The glue is still holding up. The front cover is kind of lifting up a little bit, but honestly, a lot of books do that once you start reading it and moving it around and everything. So, really what I noticed right away, these oversized pages of the Absolute Edition really show the artwork on this book. I mean, even just the regular pages, like if you compare an Absolute Edition to a regular comic book, you can see the difference in size. So, here's a regular comic. And you have most of these pages in here are full page spreads, not with like these borders like this. First issue was really cool. Swamp Thing gets attacked by some humans. He gets shot up, and then we kind of get the first look into what Swamp Thing is made of. And, you know, he gets shot in the head. What does that do to him? He's a plant, right? Or is he a person? So that Alan Moore kind of plays with that idea, which is really cool and really interesting. So here he is all shot up. I'll try to make it so we don't really get spoilers. I mean, I know it's an old story, but a lot of you guys are like me and reading this stuff for the first time. But you can see how big this cover looks on this page. Then you have this character. He's a scientist. I think it's the Floronic Man. wearing fake skin over his kind of floral body. It kind of reminds me of one of those tropes where the villain is like the same kind of thing as the hero is. But he's a scientist. He's doing an autopsy on Swamp Thing. He's the one that tells Swamp Thing what he really is. And he plays a little bit of a role later on in the book as well. Awesome scene here. Kind of Swamp Thing letting loose, going berserk. Very cool. See how they kind of do the artwork, how you think it's just the swamp or whatever, but you realize it's him. He's got a supporting cast. This is Abby. She's married to Matt. They're friends of Alec, who is the person who, becomes Swamp Thing. Their lives are tangled in there, and Matt, he delves into the supernatural a little bit here. There is a little cameo by Justice League and the Watchtower, which was cool, but very subtle. I guess Alan Moore really didn't want this to feel like a superhero book. I wouldn't be surprised if DC made him include them in here somewhere. But he tied it into their universe, for sure. This was an awesome interaction. You get a cameo of Jack Kirby's The Demon. He plays a little bit of role in here. I forget his name. It starts with an E. He's kind of annoying to read, though, because he talks in poem. So that's kind of frustrating. There's this one storyline where, like, evil is breaking out everywhere, and it's being watched by the Monitor, who you guys know from, like, Crisis on Infinite Earths, but not the Anti-Monitor, but the Monitor. See, look at this big full page. There's a lot of that in here. Here we get into some more supernatural type stuff. It's pretty cool stuff. Check this out. Yep. Deadman Cameo. So this was my favorite issue. This is Swamp Thing Annual 2. And Swamp Thing Annual 2 might be one of the best comic books I've ever read. I really like when they delve into like the afterlife type of stuff and seeing different writers' like interpretation of that. And I thought this comic book was awesome. It reminded me a lot of Sandman. And they borrow from the Sandman universe in an issue at the end that I'll talk about. But it kind of like him going down to hell to retrieve Abby's soul. It reminded me of like that issue in Sandman where the guy goes to Hades and they let him take his girlfriend back, but she's walking behind him and he can't turn around and look at her. If he turns around and looks at her, she'll be damned forever, and he does. It reminded me of that. It's funny because I'm not really an annual guy. I feel like most annuals are like worthless, not pertaining to the main storyline, but nah. Swamp Thing Annual 2 is incredible. This was an interesting one too. Pog. This was kind of like a side story of these kind of like cartoon animals, like characters from like Bone or like even Usagi Yojimbo, who are on the real world, and they talk like they're super intelligent, but they kind of are saying intelligent words and using them wrong. I don't know. They were written very awkward. And it was a cool kind of story on how they come from this other planet. They call it their lady, and they're on our planet now trying to find like a peaceful planet. And they find out that this planet is just as bad as theirs with like carnivores and things like that. See, like this cartoon alligator coming up to these real alligators thinking they're like his cousins or whatever, and they tear him up. It was a weird issue. Then we get this issue is kind of what is a retelling of Swamp Thing's origin in House of Secrets 92. It starts off with Cain and Abel coming to Abby in her dream, and that's kind of like a nod to the Sandman world. So they tell her a story, and it's the story of Swamp Thing, and it's a panel for panel this is the exact issue from House of Secrets 92. I even had to bust out my Swamp Thing omnibus and check. So they're basically telling her the story of the original Swamp Thing. And then it goes back to them. So that was pretty cool. The last issue was really interesting, man. The last issue, you know, Abby wants to be with Swamp Thing, right? But it's basically a whole issue on how they would have sex. The art is incredible. First of all, even the swamp scenes look great. And then when they have sex, it's more like a psychedelic thing, basically by eating a piece of a vegetable that comes out of him. And look, she starts tripping. But very dope, interesting kind of ideas coming from Alan Moore. You do get some extras in the back, some sketches. Always nice to have a little bit of extras here. Yo, Saga of the Swamp Thing. Digging this book a lot, man. I cannot wait until Volume 2 comes out. Something I'm going to just go ahead and jump right into like I did with this one. Let me know what you guys think about the Swamp Thing in the comments below. Hit that like button before you leave. And make sure you're subscribed to the channel because we're dropping daily content. Always something a little bit different. Could be reviews of collected editions, weekly comic reviews, statue unboxings, and more. So stay tuned. Stay minty fresh. Peace.